The chains around Kel's wrists clinked softly. As he was pushed forward onto the polished marble platform, the auction hall stretched before him like a cathedral of decadent soaring crystal pillars, caught the light from floating orbs, casting rainbow patterns across the assembled crowd of alien nobility. He'd been a soldier once, fighting in the border skirmishes near the Terran colonies. Now he was merchandise. Lot 47, announced the auctioneer. A tall being with silver skin and for arms, a prime human specimen. Young, healthy, remarkably intact despite recent combat experience. Kale kept his chin up, refusing to show the fear gnawing at his gut. Round him, creatures of every description leaned forward with interest. Some had scales, others fur, a few seemed to be made of living crystal. But it was the figure in the private box that drew his attention, a woman with pale blue skin and vibrant pink curls that cascaded over her shoulders like spun silk. She sat perfectly still, her violet eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. Unlike the others who whispered and pointed, she simply watched, studied. There was something regal about her bearing, something that commanded attention even in a room full of nobility. Bidding opens at 5,000 galactic credits, the auctioneer called. Hands and appendages shot up around the room. The numbers climbed rapidly: 10,000, 15, 25. Kel's heart hammered as he realized just how valuable humans had become in this corner of the galaxy. But through it all, the blue-skinned woman remained motionless. 50,000, called a voice from the crowd. The bidding seemed to stall. 50,000 once, 50,000 twice, 100,000. The voice was soft, melodious, but it carried across the hall like a blade. The blue-skinned woman had finally spoken. Her hand raised with elegant authority. Silence fell. Even the auctioneer seemed stunned. Around the room, other bidders slowly lowered their hands, unwilling to challenge whoever this mysterious woman was. Sold to Queen Elvire of the Astral Dominion, the auctioneer announced with a bow so deep it was nearly reverent. Queen. The word hit Kale like a physical blow. He'd been bought by royalty. As guards approached to escort him away, Queen Elvire descended from her box with fluid grace. Up close, she was even more striking, tall and elegant, with features that seemed carved from the finest marble. Her pink curls framed a face that was beautiful yet cold, as if she'd forgotten how to feel. She stopped directly in front of him, violet eyes meeting his brown ones without flinching. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but each word was crystal clear. "You'll do perfectly," she said, her gaze traveling over him with calculating precision. "You're exactly what I need for my nights." Then she turned and walked away, leaving Kale to wonder what fate awaited him in the palace of an alien queen, who seemed as mysterious as she was powerful. Kel's quarters were nothing like the dungeons he'd expected. Silk curtains in deep purple draped the windows, and the bed was larger than anything he'd known on Earth. Crystal fixtures cast a warm glow over furnishings that screamed luxury. He'd been bathed, fed, and dressed in clothes softer than clouds, yet the golden collar round his neck served as a constant reminder of his status. When the guards came for him at midnight, his heart hammered against his ribs. They led him through corridors lined with artwork that seemed to shift and move, past towering windows that showed 3 moons hanging in an alien sky. The queen's chambers were at the heart of the palace, behind doors that whispered open at their approach. Queen Elvire stood by the window, her pink curls catching the moonlight. She'd changed from her formal attire into a flowing gown of midnight blue that made her skin seem to glow. When she turned to face him, Kale braced himself for commands, for degradation, for the inevitable. "You may leave us," she told the guards, her voice carrying absolute authority. They bowed and retreated, leaving Kale alone with the most powerful woman in the known galaxy. She studied him for a long moment, her violet eyes unreadable. "I suppose you're wondering why I purchased you," she said finally, moving to a chair by the fireplace. "What I intend to do with you." Kel's throat was dry. The thought had crossed my mind. "Your Majesty," a ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I haven't slept properly in 3 years," she said, the admission hanging between them like a confession. "Not since the war ended, not since," she trailed off. vulnerability flickering across her features before the mask slipped back into place. "I don't understand," Kale said carefully. "Your species radiates warmth, comfort, something mine has forgotten." She gestured toward the massive bed dominating the room. "I don't want your body, human. I want your presence, your peace." Kale stared at her, processing the impossible. "You brought me to sleep next to you, to help me sleep, yes." Her chin lifted with regal pride, but he caught the uncertainty in her eyes. "Your kind dreams peacefully. Perhaps some of that tranquility will transfer to me." The night that followed was awkward and tense. Kale lay rigid beside her, hyper-aware of every breath, every movement. But as hours passed, he began to understand. The queen didn't touch him, didn't make demands. She simply lay there, her breathing gradually evening out as his natural warmth seemed to calm something deep within her. When dawn broke and she finally slept, Kale realized he'd witnessed something extraordinary, an alien monarch more powerful than any human leader, reduced to buying companionship because she'd forgotten how to find peace. 3 weeks into his captivity, Kale no longer flinched when the guards came for him. The routine had become familiar: midnight summons, quiet conversation, then hours of serving as a human sleeping aid for the loneliest queen in the galaxy. But tonight felt different. Alvarez was pacing when he entered, her usual composed demeanor cracked. "Tell me about Earth," she said without preamble. "About your home." Kale settled into the chair she designated as his, watching her move like a caged predator. "What would you like to know?" "Everything." "Nothing." She stopped, pressing her palms against the window. "Tell me about choice, about freedom to leave when you wish, to love whom you choose." The pain in her voice was unmistakable. Kale studied her profile, noting the tension in her shoulders, the way her fingers trembled slightly against the glass. "I had a small apartment near the ocean," he began carefully. "I could walk along the beach whenever I wanted, listen to the waves, feel the sand between my toes. Simple pleasures. But they were mine. Simple pleasures," she repeated, as if the words were foreign. "I've never known such things." "Tell me about your life," Kale ventured, surprised by his own boldness. Alvarez's laugh was bitter. "I became queen at 16 when my parents and brothers died in the Crimson War. 17 years of ruling, of making decisions that affect billions of being." She turned to face him, and for the first time, he saw her without her mask, of being utterly alone. "You're not alone now," he said softly. Something shifted in her expression. She moved toward him, stopping just close enough that he could smell her perfume, something like starflowers and moonlight. "Aren't I?" she whispered. "You're here because I own you, because I paid for you." "No." Kale stood, closing the distance between them. "I'm here because you need me. There's a difference." Her breath caught as he reached up to touch her face, his fingers tracing the elegant line of her cheekbone. Her skin was warm despite its alien hue, and softer than silk. "I shouldn't," she began, but he silenced her with a gentle finger against her lips. "You're not a queen right now," he said. "You're just Alvarez, and I'm just Kale." To people who found each other in the darkness, when she finally allowed him to hold her, to stroke her pink curls while she trembled against his chest, Kale felt something inside him shift. This wasn't about ownership anymore. This was about two souls recognizing each other across the vastness of space and species. That night, for the first time, she slept deeply enough to dream, and when she woke, she was holding his hand. The transformation was gradual but undeniable. What had begun as necessity evolved into something deeper, more dangerous. Alvarez's cold mask slipped more often, revealing glimpses of the woman beneath the crown. She laughed at Kel's stories of Earth, asked endless questions about human customs, and began to share pieces of her own heart. "My advisors are growing suspicious," she admitted one night, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest as they lay together. The physical intimacy had developed naturally, born from emotional connection rather than mere desire. "They whisper that the human has bewitched their queen. Have I?" Kale asked, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Her skin tasted like starlight and secrets. "Perhaps," she murmured, tilting her face up to meet his eyes. "Though I think it's the other way around." Their first kiss was tentative, A question asked and answered in the space between heartbeats. She tasted of alien fruit and possibilities, and when she deepened the kiss, Kale felt reality shift around them. This wasn't just attraction, it was recognition. Two halves of a whole finding each other across impossible odds. "I've never felt this before," Elvire confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "This wanting, this completeness, neither have I," Kale admitted, his hands tangling in her pink curls. "Not like this, when they finally came together fully." It was with the desperation of lovers who knew their time was borrowed. Elvire's skin seemed to glow in the moonlight, and every touch was electric. Every kiss a promise they both knew they might not be able to keep afterward. As she lay in his arms, Elvire spoke words that changed everything. "I love you." The admission hung between them like a bridge spanning an impossible chasm. Kale's response was to hold her tighter, to press his face into her curls and breathe in her scent. "I love you too," he whispered back, and felt the universe shift around them. But love, they both knew, was a luxury neither could afford. In the corridors of power, whispers grew louder. The Queen's advisors noted her improved mood, her lessened cruelty, her strange new tendency toward mercy. They didn't like the changes, and they knew exactly who to blame. "They're coming for you," Elvire warned him one night, her voice tight with fear. "My council grows restless. They see you as a threat to the natural order." Kale cupped her face in his hands, memorizing every detail. "Then we'll face them together." "You don't understand," she said, tears beginning to fall. "If they force me to choose between you and my throne, between you and the peace of my empire, then choose," Kale said simply. "When the time comes, choose, and know that whatever you decide, I'll understand." But even as he spoke the words, they both knew that some choices came with prices too high to pay. The confrontation came at dawn, when the council chamber doors burst open and Chancellor Vex strode in with 6 armed guards. Kale barely had time to register their presence before energy restraints locked around his wrists and ankles. "What is the meaning of this?" Elvire's voice cut through the air like a blade, every inch the imperious queen as she rose from her throne. "The meaning, Your Majesty, is treason," Vex replied, his four eyes glittering with malice. "This human pet has corrupted your judgment, weakened your rule. The noble houses speak of rebellion. The outer colonies question your strength, my strength." Elvire's laugh was dangerous. "I have brought peace to systems that knew only war." "You have grown soft," another advisor interrupted, merciful. "The iron fist that once commanded respect now offers pardons and clemency. All because of this creature." Kale met Elvire's eyes across the chamber, seeing the war raging within her. He thought of their nights together, of the way she'd learned to smile again, to feel again. He thought of the woman who'd emerged from behind the crown, beautiful and vulnerable and utterly worth loving. "The solution is simple," Vex continued. "Execute the human, publicly. Show the galaxy that Queen Elvire's heart belongs to her empire, not to an alien slave." "No." The word rang out with absolute authority. Elvire stepped forward, her presence filling the chamber like a storm about to break. "I will not." "Then you force our hand," Vex said sadly. "The noble houses are prepared to declare you unfit to rule. Your own council will vote you out unless you prove your loyalty lies with your people." The silence stretched taut as a bowstring. Kale watched Elvire's face, saw the moment when the queen warred with the woman, when duty battled love. He wanted to tell her it was okay, that he understood, that he'd rather die than see her lose everything she'd worked for. But then she spoke, and her words shattered the world. "Then I abdicate." The chamber erupted in chaos. Advisors shouted. Guards shifted uncertainly, and Vex's face went pale with shock. Through it all, Elvire stood unmoved, her violet eyes fixed on Kale with unwavering determination. "You cannot," Vex began. "I can, and I do," Elvire interrupted. "I renounce my claim to the throne. Effective immediately. Let my cousin Darien rule in my place." She smiled then, and it was like watching the sun rise. "I choose love over power. I choose him over everything." The energy restraints fell away as chaos consumed the chamber. Kale ran to her, catching her in his arms as she laughed with pure joy. She was no longer a queen. No longer bound by duty or expectation. She was simply Elvire, and she was free. Are you sure? He whispered against her hair. I've never been more sure of anything, she replied, pulling back to look at him. Besides, I think the galaxy could use a little less iron and a little more mercy. Let someone else rule through fear. I choose to live through love. As they fled the palace together, hand in hand, Kale realized that sometimes the greatest victories came not from conquering, but from choosing to surrender everything for the one thing that mattered most.